All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our first session of MDPI's Review Club of this year, 2020. I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Diana Mara-Fage, and I am a journal relations specialist at MDPI. And I'm very glad to have you all here today to discuss a very, very important part of the scholarly publishing, the peer review. So let me start introducing MDPI. We are a pioneer in open access publishing since 1996, and our most important mission is to foster multidisciplinary academic exchange. Our portfolio consists of 482 open access journals, including 473 peer-reviewed journals and 9 conference journals. We are glad to be supported by almost 300,000 academic experts who share the same values as us. I will continue by sharing one of our related journals, Sensors. So Sensors is an international peer-reviewed and open access journal focused on the science and technology of sensors. It is published semi-monthly online by MDPI and is supported by numerous societies in the same field. We are glad to receive great support and give it back by providing various types of discounts on article postage. Moving on to the most interesting part of the session, I would like to introduce our speakers. Professor Dr. Mark Playbook, affiliated with the University of Leuven and the University of Ghent, will provide us with valuable insights into the art of peer-reviewed, which is followed by Dr. Giacomo Peruzzi, affiliated with the University of Padua, and he will share his journey as a reviewer. So each session will last approximately 20 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A session. So for any questions you have, please use the Q&A box to ask questions at any time you want, and also feel free to raise your hand in case you would like to ask a question directly to one of our speakers. Well then, and that's all from my side. I really hope that you are going to enjoy our session today, and I'm going to pass the mic to Prof. Dr. Playbook.
Hello everyone. So I will speak in these 20 minutes about the slippery art of judging peers, pitfalls and guidelines to effectively conducting scholarly reviews. There is a whole of this in the title. So I will start with some introductory remarks. Here is my short table of contents. I will tell a little bit about introduction. Then how can we conceive of the reviewer as a kind of gatekeeper, very important. Then something about the art of reviewing. I name it the arts. It's not a science. And then some pitfalls of reviewing, which are also very important, both for the reviewers and for the people who are reviewed. And then the reviewer as a facilitator. And this, I think, is the most important thing of my talk today. So I will start with reviewing. If you are invited to review, then you are the beginner as a young scholar. It gives a good feeling. It seems that you are going to belong to the club. They asked me to review, so I must be a little bit important. But when you do the reviews, it's very hard work. It's very demanding task. And the question also is, can we get some reward? You have the very young ones and the older ones. And the esteemed speakers, the scholars which are very big names, mostly they do not have time and they do not have the motivation. And it's also the question, when you have to recruit reviewers, it's very difficult. You know, this would be the best person to do the review, but the person is not interested or he does not have time. And young scholars also, they are willing to do a lot of work, but mostly when there is a kind of reward and a kind of, you do the work, but you have something in recommendation. And then which are the benefits for the reviewer also. And then what I told already, soliciting reviewers. This is mostly when you are part of the editorial team. I was in the editorial team of Frontiers, and for one paper, I have solicited more than 75 reviewers. They all did not have time, and this is becoming a big problem. You have to do this. It's all for nothing. You have to do it, and there is no remuneration as a problem. So there is a kind of crisis, and most at times the most suitable candidates often decline. Not always. If you are an established scholar and you have a big network of people, then it's going easier. Then you can ask, I have done something for you, so do something for me. And it's not so difficult then to say to these people, try to do this. There is another problem. That's also one of my problems. I'm working in an interdisciplinary field. I often am asked to do reviews for an area that I do not know. And this is, how to say, then there is no match with my knowledge. But then you can say I decline. But if you do this as an advocate, as a devil's advocate, and you do not have the knowledge, the specific knowledge, it's also very interesting that you are doing the reviewing and that you say, I do not understand this. This is too technical. This is too difficult. And I think if you are in a reviewer team of 3, 4 reviewers, and there is one outside of the field, I think this can be a considerable additional value to do this. But I will come on this again. So this is just my starting point. So then why should we do reviews? And why are reviews needed at all? Well, it has to do with, first of all, with academic standards. The standards of a journal. If you have an impact factor and you have a 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 or 25, it has to do with the rejection rate. If you have 100 submissions and you have 5 of them who are accepted, then you have a high rejection rate. It means that the journal is very appealing, that many people are trying to apply and to submit. And then you have, how to say, the wealth of choice. If you must choose between 20 submissions and you have to choose only one, then you can take the best one. If you must ask for submissions, then you are very glad that you have one, then you cannot have these standards. I think the standards of the journal are very linearly related with reviewing, but also the scholars. If you have, it means also if you have to review and you start reviewing, when you have read, let's say, one page, you already have a kind of visual feeling. This is a good paper. And then if you use the standards, then you can use them to tax the scholars and to give a kind of impression. This is a very good scholar or a scholar who has to learn a lot of things. Then, very important for reviewing is the content check. The relevance of the content, that's a problem. There are many young people who have very sophisticated knowledge of methodology of statistics, and they know all these kinds of proofs, but they do not have ideas. And there is a lot of data, but no ideas. This is a problem. And so if you have a significance, that you say there is a small significant effect of something, but you do not have really a take-home message that you say, I have found something which is very interesting. That's a problem. And this is a problem. So if the content is not really relevant, then we can ask also, is it worthwhile of being published? Then this is perhaps more difficult, but not so problematic. It's a methodological check. If there is a real problem with methodology, then it's not difficult to say we have to reject this. And then this for me, especially also for the hard sciences, can this be a problem, is also the context of the theoretical and the empirical background. If you do a kind of review, then you need to have a kind of theoretical background. But if you are doing empirical research as well, and you are starting from nothing, then it's also a lot of time. You have to know the other things that have been found. And so the theoretical and empirical background must be at sufficient height. Then the ultimate aim of reviewing should be that you say, I will reject or accept the paper. And perhaps more important also, it's not always yes or no. At times it's a major modification or minor modification. But if you suggest to have a modification, then the aim should be that you increase the overall quality of contribution. And I think this is the most important aspect for a good reviewer, that he gives a kind of constructive review to say, these are the good points, these are the weak points, and you should do this in order to improve this quality. And I think this is very important. I will speak about this more in a moment. So then you have input and output dynamics, as I call this. I like to do reviewings. I do a lot, too many at times. I cannot accept them all. But when I have an invitation for reviewing, then the question is always, will I do this and why? Is it for me? Does it have some additional value? Does it give me some input? And I say here input, if you receive the submission, then at least you want to be informed. And when you do reviews, mostly you have the latest and the newest findings. So it's very good to have your pulse on the current knowledge of the fields. This is for me an important thing. Then it's also, if you are already a little bit older, as I am, it's also challenging your own knowledge. If you now have a lot of knowledge about statistics and you do 10 reviews, then it's always possible that you will be confronted with a new kind of test. You are never at the end. So there is always something new to find out. And it's also a very easy way to collect information. You have it all, mostly if you have a paper with a long list of references, there is all kinds of overview and synopsis in this paper. And then you have a very dense bringing together of insights which are there. This is what I call the input. Then it's the task also that we have some output. And then we should try to provide constructive peer review. I mean constructive. It must be helpful, not only say it's bad. And then we have to try to identify the weaknesses of the submission. Also the strengths, but especially the weaknesses, in order to make it more stronger. And then also, I have been reviewed myself also, and I not always like the reviews. Sometimes I find them very interesting, but at times they should do this, and then they suggest and they give a name of an author, and they just give a name, and then you have to do the search. Well, if you can provide the missing information by giving a detailed reference and some information which you can find, if it is a chapter in a book which is not readily accessible, this is not easily for the reviewer, for the author to find out. But you can refer to a journal, and mostly, if possible, an open access journal. This is very interesting information. And I think a good reviewer should do his best to provide this information, if possible. So something is coming in, something is going out, and we give something back for something that we receive. So there is a kind of circularity. This is what I call, a little bit metaphorically, input-output dynamics. And then I also like this, the conception of a kind of virtual co-authorship. There was one review I've done, and I spent a lot of time and energy, and I had the impression at the end I could have been co-author of this paper. But of course, I wasn't. But if you have this kind of being a virtual co-author, then this can be very interesting. And then perhaps also for the editorial team of this journal, if you have a very good review and the paper is accepted, it can be interesting also that we have the name of the author for this journal. This is no problem. But it can be a problem for the reviewer that he does not know the name of the reviewer. And we should leave also the possibility that you make yourself knowable to the reviewed person, that he can have contact with you. Doing a good review can be a possibility to make your network and to get in touch with other people with whom you share something. So this conception of virtual co-authorship I like very much. So let me first proceed. If we have to review, then you can also the question how you to do the reviews. And there are many available guidelines. Sometimes there are guidelines from the journals. You can find them on the internet. And there is no perfect format. We are all different people. And the format must reflect a little bit the reviewer's personal style. But some standards must be met at least. So mostly when I do a review, I always try to give some general remarks and then detailed comments. And these comments should be as concrete as possible. It is also important if you give general remarks that you try to locate the problems in the paper, that you say this page, this line. At times you have to do reviews, and then you receive the submission and you only have the pages. There is no page numbering, there are no lines, and then it's very hard work to locate it in the paper. So it's very good if you can say line from there to there. It's a lot of work. I'll say you have to say page there, third paragraph, fifth line. This should be also needed, that you have the numerical lineage. And then also, if possible, suggest solutions to the problems, even in case of rejection. Especially for young scholars, if you get a rejection, with a good review, you can learn a lot from these peer reviews. And I think also if you reject the paper, you should do some efforts to motivate your rejection and to provide also solutions and recommendations for increasing the overall quality. So this is very general. So now we start to my first point, the reviewer as a gate paper, and they say it's this way or this way. It's a very important thing. You can say, is it judging or is it condemning? And condemning, it's more narrow. It's always negative. Judging can be positive as well. I think the positive judgment is as important as the negative one. And if you have a very good paper, by giving good peer review, you can make it even stronger. And then you can say this could be better and this should be better, and you can do this additional writing, and this can be just a suggestion. It should not be mandatory, but you can give a lot of references. You can always refer to your own papers if needed, and but not be mandatory. And then this is important. So when you have to make this judgment or this condemnation, mostly when I do a review, I read the review and I have a first impression, which I call the kind of visceral feeling. It's not convincing. And then you continue reading, and then at the end you have a feeling, oh, what should I do with this? Is it rejection or not rejection? And then you can do a second reading, and then you can take more distance. You have already this kind of visceral feeling. And then you can go beyond this visceral feeling and you can think about it. And if you take some time, some days between the first and second reading, you can always have a kind of, you have thought about this, and then it can help. But it's, I think it's not a good idea to reject from a first gut feeling. You have to do at least two readings to do the rejection. And also, as to the contents, it's important also that you see your own position. If you are an empirical scientist and you have to review a theoretical paper, this can be a problem. And there are very, very excellent empiricists who are very reluctant to give consent to papers who are more theoretical, and the other way. So I think it's important that we have empirical papers, especially for the more hard science-oriented journals. But there is also, if you go to the history of hard sciences, this was the history of mathematics and physics was done by philosophers. And if you go to the philosophy of mathematics and the philosophy of science, then you see that there was a lot of theoretical thinking, which was the beginning for later empirical work. And it's not easy to get published a more theoretical paper in a more empirical journal. So this is the problem. And at times the hard science people, they speak not with much respect about armchair research or blue sky research. You can do it when you are sitting on your chair without lab and without quantification and statistics and so. But we should try to find a kind of balance between them. There is a lot of empirical work which is very interesting, but which does not have the needed theoretical background. And there is much armchair research which is waiting for empirical implementation. And if you can bring this together, these two, and you can put them together in an interdisciplinary team, then you mostly get the best papers. So it's also very important as a reviewer that you have a kind of openness to approaches that may diverging and that are also opposed to your own finding. And then also the benefit of doubt. There are so many examples of historical mistakes of papers and books who were rejected at the time and who are now one of the most read books. And I will give an example. So I give two examples, an example from my own and another example from the American Aristotle. I start with the first one, my personal position from rejection to publication. So, and then I will speak about the historical mistakes with embargo on publications due to personal concerns by opponents, which is a commonly strategy in science. So, my personal position, I was invited for an abstract for a conference. I have submitted my abstract. It was rejected at first, and then it was accepted finally. Then I was invited for a concept book. Also, and then I was asked to make an extended monograph, and finally I got my peer review, and now it was accepted and it had become a book, but it was rejected at first. So you must be lucky if there are 3 reviewers and 2 of them say it's not worthwhile, then it's not there. And this is the case not only for me. Another one, and then it's done with my story. I had a scholarly paper it was for Frontiers. It was rejected also at first round. Then it was accepted, and then the final impact was so many views, and it was here in the top of impact factors. So just to say that we must be very, very conscious with what we are doing. Another one, this is a very interesting guy. He's called the American Aristotle. Charles Sanders Peirce, you have to pronounce. He has been very influential as a chemist, mathematician, logician, philosopher, and logician. He had an extremely big output, and he has done major contribution to philosophy of science, and he has published papers in all kinds of things. But he has a lot of unpublished papers. And if you have a look at his papers, most of his papers have been in quarantine for about 50 years. And now they are trying to digitalize his papers and to get them published. But there is still to be published. So this is here his work. If you have all his manuscripts together, you have in book formats about 100 books. And of his papers, this is what the manuscripts which were at Harvard, sorry, here, this is all not published. And this is published. And the man is dead already for 100 years, so it's waiting for. And this is so important. So this is what we have here. This is manuscripts. It's waiting there. And we will be lucky when this will be published. But we need reviewers who say, yes, we will do this. And this is also important. So his output was overwhelming. And you can ask the question, how is it possible that such a worthwhile guy who spoke about mathematics and physics and all this and logics, that this is not published already? Then perhaps there were too many papers. His style of writing was very circumstantial, very hard with regard to readability and understandability. And I think if he should leave now, and we should invite him to contribute and to submit for our journals, and you should have 3, 4 reviews for each of his things, then you should have papers who would be more accessible. And this is at this stage what is to be done also. So this was just an example of this thing. So now I come to the main topic of my talk, the art of reviewing. I call it an art, it's not a science. There is a lot of freedom in this. And this is very important when you are writing as a young scholar, but also as an old one. Then you are there, you have your blank space before you, and you have to start writing, and you're trying, and you are doing a lot of work. And mostly as an author, you may think that you have a lot of knowledge, not to say most of the knowledge needed, and that you have all the knowledge needed to understand your paper. And then it's sent to the reviewer who has to read it, and also the readership of the journal. This is the aim of a paper. And then this paper, who does not have this full knowledge, has to read the paper. And even if you have a very specialized journal, it's about chemistry or it's about physics or mathematics, then you can say the mathematicians who will read it, they have the sufficient knowledge to understand it. This is mostly not the case. And that's a problem. And if there is too much distance between the knowledge of the author who has full knowledge and the partial or even lacking knowledge of the reader, then they have the role of the reviewer as the mediator, who have to translate and to say, this is too difficult, this is too easy. I have to say, you have to try to align the understandability of this guy with this author. And I think this is very interesting, to see the reviewer as a mediator. And it's a very beautiful definition of a reviewer. So then mostly there is a kind of tension here between the author's knowledge and the knowledge by the readership. And this depends also on the standards of the journal. There are very specialized journals, especially in medicine, with very high impact factors. And there you may say, if you read this journal, we assume that people who read this have the need and knowledge to understand this. So this can be another style of writing. But mostly, not to say always, there is a kind of overestimating of the knowledge of the readership, especially if you use statistical possibilities to do this. And there is also a lack of empathy for the non-informed reader. And then I always, when I do reviews, I always say try to provide a short, intuitive explanation. A little more text, 2-3 sentences, just to say what is this about, and then you can give a reference for going into the details. But if you speak about a kind of methodology, a kind of technique, a measurement, and only give the name of it without saying what it is, then you have a lot of difficult words, and this is very hard to read. So then you can have a kind of gain in understandability. Let's say that you have at 10 places that you say, I have 2 sentences just to intuitively explain what this topic or this concept is about. Then your paper will perhaps be 1 page longer, but it makes the readability much, much greater. And then it's also important as a reviewer that you help the author to do what you know, to kill my darlings. If you have a long paper and you say it's all important and I like all this stuff, it's my stuff, and you say I have to delete half a page or 2 pages, oh, this is so painful. So then you need an external eye who is telling to you, perhaps it's beautiful, but it's not needed. And this can be very helpful. So you can say, if you would like to have it in your paper, you can also refer to appendices or footnotes or supplementary evening. But try to keep the main text that you can say, this is the line of thought. It's easy to follow, and this can help helpful. So then we have a kind of dichotomies. If you have a paper, it can be very, your style of writing can be technical, very technical, but it can be also intuitive. I think also it's good to have both of them, that you go into the technicalities, but that you always explain in intuitive terms what you are meaning. Then you have the focus versus the broader overview. Mostly if you have hard sciences, and especially in medical journals, it's at times very, very narrowly focused. A paper from 1 to 3 pages, and it's all there. You have done, this is very focused. But you can have also review papers, and you can always have the combination of both. So this is also a dichotomy. Then, is your paper, is it abstract or is it concrete? Also with all possible transitions between. Or you aiming at a specialized readership or a broad readership? Will you provide positive or negative findings? If you have a very well done paper with research, and it is methodology very strong, and you have found that something does not work, well, this is also a finding. And we should not only publish positive findings, we should also publish negative findings, especially in medicine, very important. Then also, is it descriptive or is it explanatory? And is it aimed at making inferences of what you are doing? And then finally, is it an empirical or a pragmatic paper? And this at times can be very difficult for reviewers and also for the authors. So which are criteria for assessment? First of all, I think language use. I'm also not not a native language user, but I try to improvise my text. But if you write a paper down, you should at least provide something which has the needed standards for language use. This is the first criterion. Then the relevance of context. I have done many reviews of very well-written papers with very strong methodology, but without any relevance, no findings. So there's a lot of work, but that you say, is it worth to be published in a paper? And then the style of writing, two major things, the readability and understandability. If you start reading and you say, oh, this is interesting, and you are urged to continue reading, then you have a high readability. But if you start reading and say, oh, it's very hard and I don't like this, then you have not a readable style. It must be appealing a little bit. And you should also understand it. And if you are a scholar and you think of yourself that you have a lot of knowledge and you start reading and you do not understand, then this is very frustrating. So the understandability. Then the structure of the paper, this is also a hard thing at times, and there I think reviewers can be very helpful to say the structure is not well structured, and can you give suggestions? And then the referencing style. In hard sciences and empirical sciences, if you have references which are older than 5 years, it's already dated. But if I think times are changing, and we have now many young people, scholars, who only know the literature from the last 5 years, but then they do not have the big picture. And I think we should think about this kind of referencing style. I think also revaluing older contributions, especially for the founding fathers of science. And then in-depth elaboration and critical discussion is also very interesting. There are authors who have lists of references which are very extended, and they quote and they refer to authors, but they do not do something. There is no in-depth elaboration. So it's used only in a cosmetic way. And then if you have references, you should use them, at least with some in-depth elaboration. So this is, for me, are some criteria for assessment. Then I will say a little more about the readability. First of all, the language use. Very important is that you explain very clearly the focal terms, which mostly are in the title of the paper. And if you read the paper and you have read the whole paper and you have a look at the title and you do not have an intuitive meaning of what does this mean, then the paper has not convinced you. You must have a clear take-home message. Your focal term must be explained. Focal term or terms, there can be many of them, but focal, it means that there are only some of them. And then also a big problem is the use of abbreviations which are not explained at full. And if you have too many abbreviations, you have 20, 25, and there is no list of abbreviations, then you have to do a kind of study of the paper in order to be able to understand it. And this is a problem. So we should use the abbreviations where they are wanted. But if you're commenting in a discussion section or conclusion section and it's main text, you can even as well use the full instead of the abbreviations. This is really a problem for readability in many papers. Then also this can hamper the rhythm of reading. Then also the figure and the table captions which are not sufficiently explained. There are so many beautiful figures, very beautiful, and then you have the X and Y axis, and the units of measurement are not explained. There is no figure caption, no table caption, and there is not sufficient explanation to understand it. It must be that a figure must be readable a little bit on its own, without necessity of reading the whole paper. So you must provide in the captions the needed information to interpret at least a little bit the figures and the tables. Then you have the understandability, and this is also not easy to assess, but there is a kind of tension between erudition, which I like, and pedantry. And pedantry is, of course, showing erudition, but if it is not needed. And if you are showing too much erudition, then it's become pedantry. And I think this is especially a problem of young scholars. And older scholars, they have already proven what they are. They do not have the need to prove that they are very important. And if you can say it also, you can use the difficult words also, but you can give the intuitive description, and then you can put the technical term between brackets, and then you show your erudition without being pedant, because you explain it. Pedantry means that you are using the terms to show that you're very smart, but you do not explain them. And this is not easy to read. I hope this is clear. Then it's also important that you briefly, very briefly, explain all the technical terminology in intuitive terms. And this can be very short, one sentence or two sentences between brackets, but can be very helpful. Then also in the methodology, explain all steps. This is especially a problem if you read papers about mathematics, where you have jumps instead of steps, and then you have to try to see the steps, and it's not explained. And then it's also very difficult for reviewers to judge the value of the steps. Then also the content of a paper should be to some extent self-containing. If you have to read 5 books and 25 papers in order to understand a paper, then it's already difficult. And then if you have as aim in your readership the specialist readers, this can be done, but you should always try to go a little bit broader. That I'm working in the domain of music, so many music scholars have a lot of knowledge about statistics and a bit of neuroscience, but they are not mathematicians, for instance. And if it's about music and mathematics, that can be a very interesting paper. But if you are using technology and words that musicians do not know, this is a problem. Okay, and then also the figures must be understandable without need of reading the main text. This has to do with understandability. So the writing style, especially for the authors, especially the problem of young scholars, at times what I called already, manifesting erudition, okay, pedantry, not okay. You should explain the major concepts, and then also that the major question is also, what is the take-home message? If you are at the end of the reading of the paper, then you must know what it is about, and it should be a simple message. This was my question, I have done this research, and these are my findings, and this is clear to me. A take-home message, or some take-home messages. And then at times also, there is a lot of trivial matter, details without relevance, and then that's a problem that you have to see the forest for the trees. If there are too many details, it's difficult to have the take-home message. So we have to filter it out. And I think also that reviewers can be very helpful also to say, this seems to me rather trivial, this has no relevance, you should go more to the major claims. And then here also the same with abbreviations. Then, how should we do as reviewers, our reviewer style? I think be critical, yes, but also constructive. And there should be a balance between the positive and the negative aspects of the paper to review. This must be in balance. Some reviews are very hardish and very harsh and rude, and this doesn't help nobody. It's also interesting to give general remarks on writing style and detailed comments, of course, and also provide full references in case that you suggest additional references, and that you respect also the autonomy of the author. It's not our paper, it's a paper by the author, so we should not try to say you should use my style of writing, but you should respect also his autonomy. Which are the criteria for reviewing? Well, now I come also to the problem of the recruiting of reviewers. Mostly they have no time, or they have not the needed expertise. And it's also, if you have not this needed expertise, it can be very interesting also to do the review. But then you have the role to be the devil's advocate, and that you point to problems of understandability and readability. So I think if in the team of reviewers there is one outside of the box who does not have the needed background knowledge, but some knowledge, it can be also an additional value to make the paper better, especially with problem to readability and understandability. And then the feedback by non-experts is valuable as well. And this is especially the case for interdisciplinary scholarship. So I'm coming also almost at the end. What are possible pitfalls of reviewing? We should, as reviewer, clearly see what is the type of the paper. Is it an empirical paper? Then you can review it with the standards of an empirical paper. But if it is a review paper, then you should not review with the standards of an empirical paper. And this is a major source of conflicts between reviewers and authors. Then there is also the danger of assessing with the wrong standards, which are called just empirical review, hypothesis and review paper. These are all other formats of papers, and they should also be reviewed accordingly. And then you also have this dichotomy and tension between science and humanities, and we now have the digital humanities. We see that the disciplines which are diverging at origin are coming together more and more. And then also it means also that we have to explain that we have to be on speaking terms with each other, that we have to understand each other, and we have to do some efforts to make our claims understandable. So, and then there is also the danger of imposing our own style of writing or the setting up of research design. And we should also, as I told already, respect the author. So, and then I think also that divergent opinions can be fruitful. You can do a review and that you say, oh, this is not my position. I don't like it. It's even opposed to my beliefs, but it's a very good paper. It's very well written. And it can be very interesting for starting discussions. So I think you must be able to say, yes, I will, I accept it for publication. And so, but of course, academic standards must have the final say. Then there a little bit, a few words about ethics of review. I think that most authors who submit a submission, they have worked very hard and they have done a lot of commitment and time. So we should be at least respectful, not offensive, and not humiliating. But for me, this is like an evidence. And then it's important that you highlight also the strengths, even in a weak paper, and the weaknesses of the contributions, also the weaknesses in a strong paper. Always a balance between positive and negative. And conflict of interest, of course, should be avoided. And then there is also the question of intellectual integrity and admitting our limitations. So there you come to the decision. The most difficult is the rejection. It can be a very easy decision also if the paper is very, very weak. But if you reject, you can say rejection with 2 words of motivation. I think it's important that you provide the motivation without offending authors, and that you say, this is why this paper is not, it's not at the standards. This is lacking, and you should try to improve this. And perhaps if you try to resubmit, take care of these kinds of things. At least provide the motivation, and be not offensive. A decision is also a shared decision. I think it's not a good policy to give veto right if you have 4 reviewers and there is 1 reviewer who gives a maximum score and the others say it's rejected, then there must be a possibility that you say we are going to a new submission, but we will try to save these papers. I know that many strong papers have conflicting reviewers, and this is a problem. So I do not like the vetoes. I think the editorial team should then invite additional reviewers. And if you then have another one who is very positive, then you can say, well, we will do major modifications and always and still accept the paper. This is my point of view. Then I think there is a major role here for the action editor who has to make the final decision. And then I end with the reviewer as facilitator to help to give some impetus and some power to the career of young people. I think it's very interesting that we challenge existing and prevalent frameworks and paradigms. In history of science, there have been paradigm changes. And there were always scholars who were against the prevailing paradigms. And they were not loved. It was very dangerous at times to be so. But also at this time in science also we have people with a lot of power and a lot of financial means. And they have the places in the editorial boards of the journals, and they can work as gatekeepers. And they can say, this is challenging for my opinion, my work. I don't like it. So I say, no, I will reject. And this is still happening more than we think. All young people can speak about this. Then also, I like to promote discussion. And I like especially, this is also what MDPI is doing, I think, the interdisciplinary approach, that you have all kinds of journals, and that it is possible also for an empirical journal that you accept philosophical papers, but they must be about the scope and the aims of the journal. And then I strongly believe in cross-fertilization and the tension and the cooperation between humanities and hard sciences. And this is where I feel very good myself. Then there is also the position papers where you try to say, I have a new idea. I want to promote my new idea, a little bit provocative. And this can be a target paper, and that you then invite other papers to give comments, to target papers with commenters. It's a very good format. And then it's also interesting in this regard that you have reviewers from outside the field of expertise who can work as a devil's advocate to say, I don't understand this, this is too difficult, this is too abstract. Can you make it more readable, more understandable? And so, last thing is that we should also should try to recruit suitable talent. The analogy with the sports scouting, that you say there is an athlete who has potential. When you are doing reviews, at times you are very impressed that you say, this is a very strong paper. Well, I will tell this to my colleagues, and I will give these young people a kind of forum that is interesting. And that you say, who are the young, promising new scholars? And then also, this is for new avenues for research, new perspectives, new paradigms. Seems to me at this time more important than that we always publish again endless repetitions of limited research topics, which are methodologically very strong. It's full of statistics and quantitative measurements, but there are no ideas behind. So new ideas rather than method-driven research. Method-driven research means that you have a strong lab with a lot of measurement tools and a lot of quantitative measurement techniques, and that you have people very good in statistics and so, and they know all about methodology, but you need also ideas. You have both of them, you need both of them. And so the relevance of the findings is perhaps still more important than the soundness of methodology. There can always be replication studies, but the findings mostly are not replicated. And this is a kind of thinking of mine. So this has to do with the dissemination of talent. I spoke already about historical mistakes, the relevance of findings and insights which are not detected timely. Charles Sanders Peirce, who has written a lot about mathematics, he has written about category theory. The same with Grothendieck, who has also declined from academia and who has written more than 100,000 pages, which are not yet published already. And he is called the Einstein of the 21st century. And his work is even now, he is already dead. It's not even published. We still now these great scholars who do not have the needed number of publications and the books, because the people are not ready to see what they have to tell. And I think the dissemination of talent is a major task of reviewers also. So good reviews can help to make the contents more accessible and can help to have more reads, more quotations. And our question can say, how can we help to increase the reads and the quotations of these very strong scholars? So we can also have kind of role as impresario by being a good reviewer. And so this is my last thing. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting, and I see that we have already a question in the Q&A box. In
I
case you don't
cannot
find
see.
it,
I'm
yeah,
still
so
on
at
the
the
screen
bottom of the
sharing.
screen of the webinar in Zoom, there is the Q&A. So if you go to Zoom,
It's not visible for me. You will.
I am going to read it for you in no worries. So
Yeah.
one of the attendees is asking actually both of you, how do you identify if the author used AI tools to draft the paper?
Can you repeat? You're speaking too fast.
Sorry. So
Yeah.
how do you identify if one author used AI
Oh,
tools to draft and write the paper?
it's a great question. It's very difficult. I'm also trying to see what IE is doing. I was very critical, and now I'm less critical as to the contents, but it's very dangerous. It's very difficult to find out if the authors have used AI, sorry, then you have to use the tools just for you cannot do it by intuition. But I think if you do a lot of reviews, then you see something about reviewing style. If the paper is written by two authors, for instance, you see there is a distinction in writing style. And if there is AI, it is so, then you will see this is it's not the same style of the rest of the paper. And if you have doubts about, then as a reviewer, you can ask, can you explain where did your contents come from? And then you have of course mostly in the artificial intelligence. If you go to definition for thing, this is mostly quite adequate. But if you go to the referencing style, then you have the problems. And if you see the use of referencing style by the authors, this is quite informative as to the quality of the paper. If you have a very good definition and you give a reference which is not a very valuable reference, then you know this author he did not read it. And if you give the wrong reference, also. So mostly, if you have knowledge about the content, you also know the authors. You see the reference list, and you see where and how they are cited. And then if you use AI, that's not a problem. The AI will say the same as you will say, but the style will perhaps be more readable and more understandable. This is the good thing. But you must do something critical. And I think a good reviewer will immediately see this is not self-produced. This is from the internet. And it's very difficult to use these digital tools and not to show that you are using them. Yeah. And when you are changing them, then you are doing your work yourself. So there is, as you use this as a tool, there is no harm to do this. But if you just do it in place of your own writing, then there is a problem. So I am not so afraid. Mostly people who are writing papers, they do a lot of reading. They are not graduate students. They are mostly scholars who have done a PhD or more. So they have a kind of ethics as well of writing. I think this is not really a problem. See, most reviewers will see this. So this is how I see it.
Thank you
I
very
hope
much
this
for
is
your
an answer. Yeah. Other
thank you.
questions?
Yeah, there are more questions. I saw that someone also raised their hand, so I assume that they wish to ask you a question. So,
Can you speak slowly, please? I'm not a native speaker.
Dr. Konstantin has raised their hand
Yeah,
and would like to ask a question, perhaps.
yeah, I'm
So
listening.
he could unmute his mic and he can ask the question. Or maybe if it was a mistake, then we're going to proceed with the next question. Okay, if there was indeed a question, I would like you to ask it in the Q&A box, and we're going to answer it later.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, we have another question from one of our attendees. So I'm going to read it aloud to. They are
Yeah.
asking, what is the effect on reviewing a paper and published in a particular journal? For instance, if I reject invitations to review papers, is the editor see as bad sign and reject my own submission?
No, 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 no. There is no. There is no blacklist or something like this. No, 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 no. I think I can definitely say no, no.
Yeah, I would like to confirm from our
No,
side.
mostly if you think if you are invited to review, you must just as I told, can I do something with this review? Does it have some benefit for me? And if you think it's just a waste of time, then you say I do not have time. This will have no consequences for your career. I think no. I think as I see it. Yeah.
Okay. I think these were all the questions. So again, please feel free to ask questions anytime in the Q&A box or raise your hand if you would like to ask the question directly. So let's continue with Dr. Peruzzi's presentations. I might ask him to share his screen.
Yes. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Giacomo Peruzzi from the University of Padua. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizer of this webinar for having invited me. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And today I would like to share with you my experience, my journey and philosophy as a reviewer, but not only as a reviewer, also as author and even as editor, since I'm serving as editor for a non-MDPI journal. So let's get started. Oh, these are some information about me, but these are something that you can find also on the internet, so don't waste too much time. I am at the moment a research fellow at the University of Padua, and my current research interests are actually quite broad because they span from the IoT, from distributed measurement systems in critical environments, wireless sensor network for monitoring systems enabled by LPWANs, and even machine learning, embedded machine learning for measurement infrastructure. My experience as a reviewer, I reviewed more than 250 papers submitted to journals and conferences. Among those, I reviewed at the moment 125 papers submitted to MDPI journals, and among them there are 79 papers submitted to sensors. And owing to my service as a reviewer for Sensor, I was awarded for the year 2024 of the Sensor Outstanding Reviewer Award, and I would like to thank the committee. And along with some of my colleagues, we also won this year the Sensor's Best Paper Award with a paper named Fight Fire with Fire, Detecting Forest Fires with Embedded Machine Learning Models, Dealing with Audio and Images on Low-Power IoT Devices. And actually, for those who are wondering about it, the answer is yes. We named the paper after the Metallica song because we would like to meet these two passions. We thought it could be a nice idea, and so we gave the paper such a title. Moving on, my philosophy as peer review, basically it can be summarized in what can be seen as a mantra, let's say, which is be the reviewer you wish you had when you were an author. That seems to be trivial sometimes, but I can say this is not always so trivial, because according to me, in order to achieve this goal, you have to follow a balanced approach, meaning that you should be rigorous but provide comments encouraging the authors to enhance the quality of their work. And at the same time, you should be as consistent as possible in both in successive resubmissions of the same paper and also in different papers you review in order to not apply double standards. And so at this point, one may ask, what is the right balance? actually, this is a tricky question because there's no golden rule. But what matters the most is that you are thorough, preferably strict, but always fair. Please be always fair. Remember that there is a huge difference between a strict and unfair decision. Please bear always this in mind. And since I was opening my talk, I was saying that I would like to share my experience in a threefold point of view: the author, the reviewer, and the editor. And according to me, these are the main actors playing in the peer review process that can be seen actually as a chain. But remember that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So it doesn't matter which is the role you are playing in for a specific submission, but please try to not be the weakest link of such a chain. And moving on, I'm covering now some aspects that also Mark covered, and this makes me happy because we agree on many point of views. We, as reviewers, should think as mentors and not as gatekeepers. We should work along the authors to strive for a proper and sound paper, aiming at achieving the quality standard of the journal. This is very important. And to do this, we should focus on clarity, on the contribution of the paper, and the contribution also of our comments, and on the potential impacts of our comments. We should always bear in mind that the authors who submitted their work, which we are now reviewing, are peers. And this can be, let's say, trivial, but it is not, unfortunately. Most importantly, they are people like you. So be always kind and polite towards the authors. Another important point is to try to stick to the deadline, because timeliness while you are reviewing papers is always a major plus. And this is strictly correlated to the fact that you should decline review invitations whenever they are not falling within your expertise, because you can provide comments which are not aimed at improving the quality of the paper, because you have a lack of knowledge in that field that is more than reasonable, of course. And you should decline also if you are overwhelmed in that specific period, because this inevitably it's going to affect the timeliness of your review paper, review report, sorry. And which are the common challenges I faced, so on. Unfortunately, or fortunately, because it depends on which are your point of view, the quality of the submitted papers is extremely varied. Indeed, sometimes they are poorly structured, or they are even poorly written. But on the other hand, some of them are already, let's say, good at their first submission. This is something that happens not so often, but when I have to review a paper that is already somehow good at the first submission, it's even pleasant to review it, because more or less you always end up in learning something new. Unfortunately, there are many times there are out-of-scope submissions, and this is somehow sad, because it seems that authors try to submit papers regardless of the scope of the journal they are submitting to. Indeed, it may happen to review papers that clearly falls outside the scope of the journal. In that case, we as reviewers should be as clear as possible in highlighting the motivation supporting a reject decision, and possibly resubmit because it depends on the policies of the journal, since the authors will surely appreciate it. And something that is slightly different is papers dealing with borderline topics. Indeed, sometimes papers can be really too broad, trying to cover topics that are extremely different from one another. This is extremely tough and tricky to serve as reviewers for this submission, because of course you cannot be an expert of everything and you risk to walk on the thin ice. So you have to be extremely careful in when you are invited to review these papers. Please consider wisely whether to accept the invitation or not. And if you are in doubt, my personal suggestion is that if you are uncertain in making a decision, please be conservative. Because in at least 90% of the cases, you surely won't be wrong when being conservative. And moreover, since the review process it's a process in which many actors play, the reviewers, the editors, and so on, if a reviewer proposes a conservative decision, maybe such a decision can be finally tuned by the editors, since they are supposed to have more knowledge about the topic than the reviewer. So if you are uncertain, please be conservative. That's my personal suggestion. And then coming on to the best practices I adopt while I review papers. Let's begin with references. And this is something that also Mark highlighted, because I believe that there's no point in comparing a paper with related works that are published prior to 5 years ago, because of course the actual paper should be better than those papers. So I always suggest the authors to have a look at the references and at least provide motivations to maintain citations of works which are more than 5 years old. At the same time, I also encourage the authors to avoid inciting preprints, because those works are currently undergoing the peer review process, meaning that their content may vary prior to publication, if they will be finally published, of course. Then I think that readers will surely appreciate is to resume the most significant quantitative results in the abstract and in the conclusions, because in so doing, readers can immediately grasp what the papers they would like to read achieved, and eventually decide to continuing further on in the reading, or saving time and going and select other papers to read. Then in the contribution, the contextualization of the work, the contribution of the paper must be, of course, highlighted. And most importantly, the novelty introduced by the present work must be clearly stated. And going on to the related work section, this section, according to me, should clearly compare this work with related ones, highlighting similarities and discrepancies. And most important, the authors should clearly state how the state of the art about that topic is advanced by the novelty brought in by the paper they are submitting. Then, of course, we also must have a look and try to improve the clarity and the readability, of course, of the entire manuscript, sure, but also of tables and figures. Indeed, many times I saw figures that even if I zoom in 10, 20 times, I cannot read what the figures are displaying. And the next point is something that it's typical to papers that are AI and ML oriented, which are a hot topic nowadays, indeed, in most of the times, authors propose models which may be novel or not. This is not important, but such models have hyperparameters, and those hyperparameters have values. Sometimes authors did not explain how they selected such hyperparameters and how they tuned their relative value. And this is not something that is methodologically correct, according to me. The obtained results at the end must be detailed discussed, of course. And in the conclusions, the authors should provide hints about future works and even clearly state the limitations of the proposal they are publishing, because even the most groundbreaking research has for sure some limitations, and that's fine. There's no problem about it. But I believe the authors should clearly state it. And then going on to the don'ts while you are reviewing. Please try to avoid vague comments because authors can get lost and disappointed, of course. Try to not be disrespectful even in those situations in which authors unfortunately are. For instance, when they are ignoring your comments. And this is something that unfortunately sometimes happens. Then, when you are submitting your review report, you always have a box in which you can write comments to the editors. Please use it, because those comments help the editors to understand the rationale behind your comments and decision, and these in turn help editors to make the final decision about the submission. And finally, avoid conflict of interests, meaning that you must decline if you know personally or not some of the authors. Remember that each article has its own story, of course, and therefore each revision does too. Then moving on to the interdisciplinary submission. This is something that was partially covered before, but just to stress more this fact, they are more slippery than you can think because you cannot be the expert of everything, of course. Therefore, you should carefully think whether accept the reviewer invitation or not, clearly clearly stating the limits of your expertise to the editors, and possibly suggesting, if you know him, some of your colleagues that may help the editors in performing the revision. And for what concerns the borderline topics, as we said, sometimes paper can be too broad, trying to cover topics extremely different with one another. So review such paper is actually tough. Therefore, if you are not feeling comfortable to review, decline. On the other hand, if you feel you are suitable to do it, you should focus on paper structure, on logic and clarity, evaluate the methodology, the results, and the general value of the paper. Okay, now I would like to share with you a personal experience I had, actually not as a reviewer, but as an author. But this helped me in better understanding how to not be a good reviewer, actually. With some of my colleagues, we submitted a paper to MDPI sensors, and that is the paper, it's actually online. It's a multi-layer LoRaWAN infrastructure for smart waste management. And this paper had this history. It was submitted and rejected after 2 review rounds. Then we resubmitted the paper and it was accepted after 1 review round at the second submission. I also added the paper keywords because they will help us in better understanding the story later on, but broadly speaking, they were smart waste management, LoRaWAN, fire detection, IoT, and edge computing. Indeed, I maintained here the keywords. During the first submission, at the first review round, one reviewer provided us a very short report claiming a lack of novelty and suggesting two related papers, which are the ones I listed below, which are clearly outside the scope of our submission. Indeed, just by looking at the titles, one deals with 5G networks, the other one deals with traceability and trustness of data. Therefore, we politely replied the reviewer, highlighting that the suggested papers fell outside the scope of our submission. Then, at the second review round of the first submission, the same reviewer provided a proper report that helped us in enhancing the paper quality, fostering its acceptance during the second submission, because at the first submission it was decisioned as a reject and resubmit. Okay, but at the moment, two legitimate questions arises. First one, was the same person serving as reviewer between the first and the second review rounds? Because at first we got a very short report claiming lack of novelty, suggesting paper that fell outside the scope of our submission, and at the second review round we received a proper review report. Second legitimate question, was the first review report AI generated? And this opens the scene to another topic, which is the peer review and AI. As we all know, AI is a very powerful tool. And this it's clear, crystal clear. Therefore, we should use it. We can use it actually, but we must use it with caution. Indeed, if you would like to use it to perform summaries, quick checks or searches to detect plagiarisms or to obtain broad suggestion, you are more than welcome to use it, according to me. But at the same time, you must take these answers with a critical thinking. Because if an AI tool generates a review report, this will be surely over-automated and over-biased. It surely have vague comments, and it surely lacks of technical value and critical thinking. So, once again, if you would like to use AI in peer review, feel free to use it for some things, not to generate the overall review report. Because to summarizing, human judgment remains essential. This is important. And so coming on to the final thought, the take-home message, I believe that peer review is a shared responsibility. Just to going back to the first similarity of the chain. And I believe that we, regardless of the role we play in a specific review process, we should act with clarity, humility, and honesty. In order to achieve a final claim that seems to be simple, but it is not actually trivial, but it is very, very important. Support science, not just evaluate it. So that was it from my side. I would like to thank the organizer of the webinars. I would like to thank you all for attending, and I hope you find these useful or at least interesting. And thanks again to all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peruzzi. And now I would like to give the chance to our audience. Does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand or feel free to write it in the Q&A box. There is actually, I think, a question that was asked during the presentation by someone in the chat. So someone asked if you are using AI tool when review. If you are using any AI tools.
Okay. Allora, basically, I don't use it, or better, I use sometimes for the topics I covered in the presentation. if I have to detect some plagiarisms, if I have to broadly grasp the topics of the papers, but not to generate the report. It's always me writing the report, of course. And it's more than fair and correct that MDPI does not allow the use of AI during the review process.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for your answer, and I share the same opinion. So, anyone else has any other questions?
Thank you for the appreciation. I'm just reading the chat webinar.
We have a question I see. What is your opinion on open peer review?
This is a double-edged sword, according to me. Because from one hand, it's something to, let's say, give a reward to reviewers if the paper will be published, of course. On the other way around, it could be dangerous because even if the paper will be published, the authors will know who reviewed their paper. And this means that in future, this can possibly cause conflicts of interests. So if it was me to decide, I'm against the open review.
Mhm. I agree.
I always mark when I do reviews the option to not discover my identity
Mhm.
when it is
Indeed,
possible.
indeed, I think the default setting for anyone that reviews for MDPI is that their identity keeps undercover, so all the reviews are anonymous by default. But they can, of course, if they wish to, they can press and they check the box of, okay, I would like to sign my report, and this option is available in case the paper is marked by the authors as open review. So at MDPI Open Review, we call it as if the paper is published, the peer review reports are going to appear on the website. But the names of the reviewers by default are not going to be disclosed unless they want to. And if they want to, their names are going to be posted in the peer review report. This is how it works. And I see someone asked a question. Yes, questions. Please. I think they are writing now, so 2 seconds. Okay, the first one is double-blind peer review, and second, reviewer recognition for higher involvement. Okay, let's see the question.
On double-blind peer review, this is something that I agree, actually, because let's say sometimes you can be biased if you know the names of the authors, of course. So on the whole, double-blind peer review is something that can potentially work, sure. And for what concerns the reviewer recognition for higher involvement, well, this depends on the journals, of course. Many of the journals for which I serve as a reviewer at the end of the year acknowledge the most valuable and most outstanding reviewers. And by mentioning them and giving them an electronic certificate or something like this. On the whole, I believe that reviewers must receive a recognition, of course, because this is something that takes time. Providing a good review, a proper review, takes time and effort, of course. And this is time that we do not spend in our work as researchers, as professors, and so on.
We also have another question put in the chat. So, what do you think about recommending articles to be cited in the revised paper?
Well, I believe that it could be fine. It could be fine provided that the topics and the papers, the suggested papers, um, improve the quality of the submission we are reviewing. And at the same time, it's, let's say, a sort of help a reviewer can give to the authors. So it could be, but in this particular point, the editors play a crucial role because it should be up to the editors to assess whether the suggested papers are actually inclined to enhance the paper quality or not. When I serve as editors for non-MDPI journals, I always look at it. And if I believe that a suggested paper does not improve actually the quality of the submission, I always write to the reviewers asking them more clarifications about it. And then I decide whether to maintain or not.
So if anyone has a question for any of our speakers, including Professor Raybrook, please do so. Okay then, I think that was all for today, for the questions. I would like to thank everyone for the participation, to the attendees for their participation and for all their great questions. I'm happy that we got really good answers and really good insights into how the best practices in peer review, because it's very, very important. It's very important that we publish in the good. So I would like to express also special thanks to our speakers, Professor Raybrook and Dr. Peruzzi. Both of you have been great. And also I would like to let you know that certificates of attendance are available upon request. So please send an email at journalwebinar.mdpi.com, and also please make sure that you add the title of this session and also the date of this session. So, thank you very much, and I wish you a great day.